Welcome to this unit on the introduction to the concepts of system software. By now you would have fair knowledge of what is a computer architecture, what are the various components of a computer like memory, input output devices and the brain of the computer, that is the CPU, and you also would know by now that what do you mean by an instruction execution, and along with that you would have also seen the various addressing modes which are used to execute an instruction. So now with that information which you have now, we'll start with the concepts of the system software. What do you mean by that? Before we start with the system software concepts, let me tell you what are the component we are going to cover in this. Like we'll be covering the basic concepts of system software, then we'll look at a little bit more detail of one of the system software, that is operating system. In this unit we will be covering one of the function of the operating system, that is the memory management. Now before we start with the system software concepts, let's have a look at what is the broad classification of a software itself. Software is broadly classified into two categories, that is the application software and the system software. Although there is a very thin line between the application software and the system software, but let us know what is it. So system software is the software which is going to be used to create the application software. Now question is, what is application software? Application software is a set of programs which are written by the programmer for some specific purpose, like for banking unit, for telephone directory if it need to be created. So those are the application software being created by the programmer, and for creating, that is for developing it, we need the system software which will help us in doing that. With this background, let us start with what do we mean by the system software in more detail. Now if we look at the system software, it provides us the convenient environment for the development of the application program as well as for its execution. If you look at some of the examples, these are some of the examples like translator, loaders, linkers and operating system. We'll be looking at all these various examples in little bit more detail in the coming slides. Let's start with the first example, that is the translator. Now as the name suggests, translator, it is going to translate something. Now what is that something? As you have understood during the computer architecture unit, that your computer understands some instruction in the machine language, that is the combination of 0101. Now here, if it is possible to write in this combination, it is very well, but if you see in normal scenario, we cannot write our program in the combination of 0101. We need some other language to write our program, but this program cannot be understood by our machine. So in that case, we need some translator in between to convert that program which has been written by us in a language like we have seen already, assembly language, high level language, to be converted into the machine language. So translator is a program which converts the user program written in some language to another language. So when we say a program written by user, we say it is written in source language, and when we say it is getting converted, so we'll say it has been converted into target language program. So now let us look at translator in more detail. So when we have discussed about the translator, we said it takes a source program and converts it into a target program. Now let's see what are the different types of translators which are available. Let's see one of the example of the translator, that we have written our program in assembly language and it is getting converted into a machine language, and for this the translator used will be the assembler. Now assembler, what is it? If you look at the language which is understood by this assembler to be converted into the machine languages, that it uses mnemonics. Mnemonics means that symbolic names, symbolic addresses for writing the program. Now at this particular point you will have one more question in mind, that I have heard this term called pseudo instruction. Now what is it? Just now you are hearing mnemonics, now you are hearing pseudo instruction. Now pseudo instruction is for the translator to do something before it does the translation. So pseudo instruction will be used by the assembly language programmer or by any other language programmer to instruct the assembler as well as the other translator to do something before it continues with its translation. Now the assembly language programming, we are saying that we are using mnemonics for writing a program. What is the advantage of having the assembly language program written by the assembly language programmer? Now if you look at the characteristics of the assembly language program, it is nearer to the you can say hardware on which we are writing the program. So lots of interrupt handling can be done much better with the help of assembly language program, and the amount of code, the size of the code will also be smaller in size as compared to what we can write in high level language program. So for doing real time application, mostly the assembly language program will be used. Now we are looking at one of the example of the assembly language program. Here if you look at, there are mnemonics which have been used like start, move, add, CMP, JLE, end, const, etc. Now if you see, start if you look at is the pseudo instruction, not the mnemonic, because this is the instruction to the assembler that okay, from here the program is starting, and next instruction move says that some data need to be moved from one place to another. So from where to where is told in this particular column called as the operand column, where it is set as data 1, R1. Now data 1 is what? It is referring to a memory location which is right now not available when the program is getting scanned. So here if you look at, the arrow shows that somewhere it is referring to a memory location which is coming later on. So this kind of reference is known as forward reference, which need to be found out later on as the program is getting scanned by the assembler. So assembler will continue further and see that there are some labels also along with the opcode and the operand. Now since this mnemonic is not very easy to understand, mostly the assembly language programmer will also put the comments along with that to make sure that they understand what they have done when they wrote this program. So once they have written this program, it will be loaded into the memory and assembler will convert it into, translate it into the machine language. Now we'll just see some more thing about the forward reference, that as we have seen that we had got one memory address where the data was available, but as the scanning of the program was being done by the assembler, that particular data was not available. So while scanning, that will be found later on that it is there. So this can be handled in two ways, that is using the two pass assembler, wherein first go only the scanning will be done, and in the second pass whatever references which have been there in that application program will be resolved. Whereas in case of one pass assembler, at the end of the first pass itself the resolution will be done. Now we look at another translator which is most commonly used by the programmer, called as the compiler. Now if you look at this compiler, it is taking the high level language program and converting into object or the executable code. Now what is this high level language program? If you look at, there are various high level language program which are available to for the application programmer. These are the languages which can be understood very easily by any human being. They follow some syntax and we have to write our code accordingly. Some of the example of the high level language can be C, C++, VB and so on. Now we are looking at the target program, which we are saying it's not the executable code, it can be object code also. Now question comes that what is the difference between the object code and the executable code? Now if you look at, the object code can be having the machine code, but there will be some unresolved references. These unresolved references, when they are being resolved, they have been resolved, then we say that we have got the executable code. No, so object code will come into picture when there is a huge application software which need to be written by many programmers, and each and every programmer will write a small module, and these module need to be clubbed together at the end to make a single application program. And for that they will be compiling their program into the object code, and once all the object codes are ready, they will be linked together to make the executable code. But sometime if you are writing a very small program, you will be directly making it into the executable code. With this information about the compiler, that what is the source program, what is the target program, let's see some more details about the compiler. Now if you look at compiler, it is again translator which is converting the high level language program into the machine language. It also does these various things like checking the errors, optimizing the code, and preparing the code for execution. Now for doing this, there are various phases in the compiler which will be doing that work one by one. If you look at, there are various phases like lexical analysis phase, syntactical analysis phase, semantic analysis phase, intermediate code generation phase, code optimization, and the code generation phase. And in all these phases you can see that there are two more components, supporting components which are available. One is system table manager and another one is error processing unit. Now let's have a look at all these phases in some more detail. Let's start with the lexical analysis phase, which scans our source program written in high level language, and it identifies during the scanning that what are the various tokens in the source program, and if there are white spaces or some other kind of comments which have been written or some blank spaces and so on, they will be eliminated. And along with that, it will also prepare a symbol table in which all this information about the tokens is going to be kept. Let's see one example of the lexical analysis phase, that the instruction written in the high level language is that if x is greater than 3, then y is equal to 5, else y is equal to 10. Now in this conditional statement, if the scanning is done by the lexical analysis, it finds that there are various tokens like x and y are the identifiers, 3, 5 and 10 are the constants, greater than equal to are the operators, if, then and else are the keywords which are specified by the language. So this way lexical analysis phase will convert the program into the token form. So then in the next phase, syntax analysis phase, what we look at is that whatever tokens which have been taken from the earlier phase, they will be constructed into the parse tree form, and whatever you can say changes need to be done in the sense that some legal statement need to be found out, language based on the language specification, that will be done in this stage. And the output of the second phase, that is the syntax analysis phase, is the parse tree. And for that, let's have a look at the example. Let's say we have the statement like x is equal to x plus 5 into 50. Now in this particular statement, if you see, the second phase has converted into the parse tree form, where it says that first of all the you can say the operation like y into 50 should be done, and the output of that should be added with x, and the output of that will be assigned to x. So this way the entire statement will be converted into the parse tree form, which will make a small steps to be performed to make a complete statement. Now another check which is done in this particular phase, that is the syntax analysis phase, is that suppose we have written a statement like x is equal to x plus 5 into 50, and after that plus is there. Now how do we know that okay this is correct statement or not? So it will be checked in this phase by the compiler, that when it makes the parse tree, it comes to know that there is an empty node available here where nothing has been mentioned. So at this stage it will generate an error that okay there is a syntactical error which is there in the program. Now, after checking the syntactical analysis of, you can say after doing the syntactical analysis of the program, that okay, based on the specification of the program, programming language, have you done the program properly or not? Now, next phase comes is to check the meaning of the code, whether the meaning of one particular statement or the set of statements written in the program are proper or not. So, in this phase, that is the semantical analysis phase, static meaning of the program is checked, and it will also make it available for the next phase. Let's see one example of the semantic analysis phase, that we have written a statement where we are trying to add one character to a floating point number. So, syntactically it looks okay that x plus y, but if you look at the type of x and y, x is character and y is floating point number. So, semantically it doesn't look good. So, that kind of check will be done in this phase. Then comes the next phase, that is the intermediate code generation phase, where the parse tree which we have got from the earlier phases will be converted into an intermediate language representation. Now, this intermediate language representation may be in different forms, like abstract syntax tree kind of structure or the quadruple kind of structure. But the question comes at this stage, that why we are talking about something called intermediate code generation phase. That is, what is the necessity for this intermediate code generation phase? If you look at this diagram, here we are looking at a language program which has been developed for one machine, has to run on different machines also. But as we said, the compiler will convert a language program into the machine language. These machines may be of different structure, as we have already seen that there can be Intel structure, this can be a Motorola structure. So, based on that, machine language will be different. So, when you are writing a compiler for converting one language program for different machines, you need to write that many compilers. Another thing which you need to look at is that if there are different languages which need to, the program of these languages need to run on different machines, you need to create so many compilers. Like one example here, if you look at, there is high level language 1, high level language 2, 3, and then there are two machines M1 and M2, and for these two machines we need to create a compiler. If we don't have this intermediate code generation phase, so we need to generate the entire set of phases for each and every machine. Now, how this intermediate code generation phase has helped is that whatever is specific to the programming language has been kept as common, and whatever is specific to the machine has been developed in these two cases. So, intermediate code generation will give the output which can be understood by this part of the compiler as well as this part of the compiler. So, the amount of work required to create the compilers for the different machines will reduce. Not only that, if you look at that, for 3 different high level language program we need to generate these things, this part remains the same. That is, once you get the intermediate code, that can be converted for this machine, that can be converted for this machine. So, this part can be made program language specific, and this part can be made as the machine specific part. So, with this, intermediate code generation is reducing the effort of creating the compiler like this. Now, if you look at this diagram, here we say this part of the set of phases for the compiler are known as the front end of the compiler, whereas the other phases which we are going to discuss now, they are called as the back end of the compiler, and that is possible only because of this intermediate code generation phase. With this, as you can see, the amount of work done has been reduced a lot. Now, we have done the intermediate code generation. Next phase comes is the code optimization phase. That is, now whatever intermediate code has been received by the next phase need to be optimized so that the performance is better in terms of execution time as well as the memory space usage. So this transformation will be done in this code optimization phase. Some examples are given here, like the sub expression will be eliminated, dead code will be eliminated, loop will be optimized. So let's see how it is done here, one by one. If you look at this example, it says x is equal to a plus b, then y is equal to a plus c plus b. So if you look here, a plus b had already been done and assigned to x. So there is no need to do this operation once again. So in place of keeping it like this phase, that is the code optimization phase, will convert it into this form, that is x is equal to a plus b and y is equal to x plus c. So with this, the execution time is going to reduce. Another example, as we said, the dead code elimination, that is a part of the code which will never be executed. If you keep it like that, it will be unnecessary wasting the space. So if you look at the part A here, it says x is equal to 10, y is equal to 20. Then we are checking whether x is less than 100. If yes, then y is equal to y plus 10. Else y is equal to y minus 10. Now if you look at x is always less than 100 here. So there is no way that this part of the code is going to be executed. So in this case, code optimization phase will eliminate this code. So the output of this particular phase will become like this, that x is equal to 10, y is equal to 20 and y is equal to y plus 10 only. So with this, the amount of code has reduced and amount of space required for keeping that code also has reduced. Another example, if you look at, is the loop optimization, where we are saying that y is equal to 0 and we are repeating it 10 times, where x is equal to 10, y is equal to y plus x. Now if you look at what is the problem coming up in this code, here x is equal to 10 is the statement which is not getting changed. It is just getting 10 is getting assigned to x 10 times, which is unnecessary work. So the code optimization phase will move this statement to the above portion, that is before the loop. Now these kind of optimization will be done by the code generation phase, code optimization phase. Next phase which comes is the code generation phase. Now here, according to the machine language, the code need to be converted so that the machine can understand those instructions and execute them one by one. As we have already seen, fetch, decode and execute, those cycle will be repeated for the machine code which is going to be generated by this phase. So in this phase, the target machine is kept in mind and code is generated based on that. And whatever sequence of instruction which has been given by the intermediate code will be used and then converted into the machine instruction which will do the desired task for us. Now for this work, code generator must have the knowledge of the target machine, that is what are the number of registers which are available, what are the special purpose registers, what are the addressing modes which are going to be used by the machine. Keeping all these things in mind, code generation phase will generate the executable or the object code. And for all these various phases of the compiler, there will be a support module, as we have seen from the first diagram itself, that there is the symbol table manager and there is the error processing part. So symbol table, as we have seen in the first phase itself, that it will be created and tokens will be put there all together in various phases. This symbol table is going to be used. Along with that, as we have also seen that in the various phases, error checking will be done. So during that error checking, error processing table is created and processing will be done in terms of just telling that particular problem, or it can be doing something else also. So let's see what it does. So symbol table, if you look at, it keeps the various identifiers and various other kinds of tokens into that during the lexical analysis phase, and these are the various types of attributes which will be kept in the symbol table, like name, type, size of the various identifiers, address of the various labels, and so on. And in the error processing support module, it will be reporting the error, that is specifying what is the type of error which has occurred, where it has occurred, in which part of the program, and also it may recover from it, continue further to complete the translation, so that we get the complete list of the various errors generated during the compilation phase. Now, if you look at the diagram again, we are coming back to the same point that we talked about the front end and the back end of the compiler. So here we are discussing some more thing about it, that how it is helping us. Front end, as we have seen already, that it is largely dependent on the source language. So whatever specification is given by the source language, that will be considered here, and it will be definitely independent of the target machine. Now if you look at the phases which comes under this particular category, that is the lexical phase, syntactical analysis phase, and the semantical analysis phase. Sometime intermediate code generation phase is also included in that based on the compiler, and the backend definitely is made up of the target machine dependence, and it will be independent of the source language. So the phases available in this particular category is the code optimization and the code generation. Now with this, we are looking at another translator which is available. Up till now we have looked at assembler, we have looked at why assembly language is required, we have also looked at the compiler and how compilation happens. Now we are looking at another tool which is available, or the system program which is available, that is the interpreter. Now this interpreter will not be converting the entire program into the machine level language program. It will be looking at the code line by line and converting it into the machine language and executing it. So interpreter program will take the user program, maybe written in assembly language, maybe written in the high level language program, and it will take the data also, and then it will convert it into the machine language line by line and execute. So if you see here, interpreter is taking user program, data, and converting into the machine language and executing and giving you the result. So what it does is, it takes the source code line by line and doesn't create the object code, but it will just execute it immediately. So for doing this, we need to have the entire source code into the memory. Whereas if you compare it with the compiler, compiler will create the object code for the repeated, like when you want to execute it, only the object code is required to be there in the memory. We don't need the source code to be available in case of compiler. Whereas in case of interpreter, you need the source code present into the memory for the execution purpose. Generally, the interpreter will be used in the test environment, so that you can check your code, that where what is maybe some logical error is there, how it can be removed, and so on. So during the test environment it will be used, but in the production environment we use the compiled code only. So with this background about the translator, let us have a look at another system program, that is the loader. Now we have written our program, we have converted into the machine language program. Now we have to execute it. Now for executing any program, as we have already learnt, that it should be available in the main memory. Now as we have also seen that main memory is volatile, you cannot keep your program in the main memory all the time. So for keeping the program, you will be using the secondary storage. Now from the secondary storage, you need to bring the program into the main memory for execution. And for this purpose, we have another system program called as loader, which will be not only copying the code, or you can say loading it into the main memory, it will also prepare it for the execution. As we see here, loader will load the binary code into the main memory. It will transfer the control to the first instruction for the execution purpose. that's what is being done by the loader. It is responsible for loading the program in the main memory whenever you want to execute it. So every time you need to execute a program, loader will come into picture to load it into some part of the memory, and then execution will start. Now there are various loading schemes which are available for loading your program into the main memory. One is assemble and go loader, another one is absolute loader, and third one is the relocatable loader. If you look at the first loading scheme, it says that whenever you want to execute your program, it will be first of all assembled and then it will be executed. So even if you don't change anything, you want to just execute your program, it will be assembled and then only the execution will start. Also along with that, you need this entire assemble and go loader plus your code, source code for the assembling purpose, and to you need memory for the executable code also. So amount of memory required in this particular scheme is more than what could have been done. So in place of this, we have another loader called the absolute loader, where the programmer says that where the program should be loaded. Now if you look at the bootstrap loader, which is generally used, that is loaded in one specific location. So whenever you boot your system, at that time loader is going to load one part of the program, that is the operating system kernel part, to be loaded into the main memory so that it start taking care of your system. So bootstrap loader will be using this absolute loader kind of scheme, where it knows that in which specific part of the memory your operating system kernel part need to be loaded. So in this case, the location will be specified by the application programmer. Now problem comes that if that particular program, that particular memory is not available for loading your program, so in that case again you need to assemble your code to change the loading position. So in place of that, we have another loader called the relocatable loader, which will relocate the code based on the availability of the memory. So mostly the third kind of loader is used for the user program, for loading the user program itself in the memory, because now we will be talking about the various memory management scheme after this particular session, that how the program is going to be loaded for the multiple programs. So in this case, relocatable loader is very, very useful. Now with this information about the loading scheme, we are going to look at that when we spoke about the compiler, we had various object code and we said that it should be linked. So what do we mean by that? So here we are looking at that example that we have a large program and this has been converted into small modules, and these modules, let's say example has been given as main, sort, search and count, and all together it makes one program. Now in this case, let's say there are 4 programmers who have written these various modules. To make it an executable program, wherever the call has been made to the other modules by the main module need to be resolved. So this resolution will be done by the linker and it will generate the executable code. So linker is going to combine the various pieces of code together as well as the data together to make a single executable. There are various linking technique along with loading also. Some of the linking technique, as you see here, static loading and linking, where before the execution can start, every linking has been done with the various modules and they have been already loaded also statically before the execution starts. Whereas in the second scheme which has been shown here, that is the dynamic loading and linking. So here whenever that particular module is required by your program, so that module will be loaded into the main memory and dynamically it will be linked. The advantage of this particular scheme is that that particular module can be shared among the various application program. It need not be attached with each and every application program. It will be kept at one place and dynamically it is linked with the various application program. So with this, sharing of the code is possible. There may be some more linking techniques. We are not discussing all of them. Just 2 examples have been given here. So with this example, we are coming to the end of the first session where we are talking about the concepts of the system software. Now here we have looked at some of the examples that okay, there is a translator like assembler, and there is a compiler, there is an interpreter. We have also looked at some more system programs like loader. There are various loading schemes we have looked at, and we have also looked at what do we mean by linker, how it helps in executing our program, making a program available for the execution. With this background of the basic system software, now we will move on to one of the system software which we have not discussed here. That is the last one in the example which we had looked at there, that is the operating system. Now we will look at operating system in more detail in the next part.